Well, it's become a massive standoff, and it's not ending anytime soon. The colleges of education, they are in crisis. Why? I will tell you. That's why we're here today. It's been 40 days since the strike by the teachers, and they teach these trainee teachers in the colleges of education, and they've been on strike for 40 days and counting. In fact, as of today, they have escalated this. They've withdrawn all other services, including counseling, by the way, ceremonies, even supervision. So this isn't getting any better. And that is why we need to pause for a second and examine what really is happening and where can we find the solution. So, and then you also talk about the sheer number of institutions affected by this. This that much will tell you, we are talking about a national crisis. 46, right? And as we speak tonight, there's every indication these institutions will have to shut down because the teachers are not in the classroom to teach and they've been away for 40 days. There's been crisis meetings. One was called today. It didn't happen because the teachers say they were simply not going to cooperate anymore. Why? Because an order had been given for their salaries to be frozen for July. And they say, well, we're going to call your bluff, freeze it. We are actually now not doing anything, withdrawing all services in reaction to that. This really is a story. This 69,000 students who are in these 46 colleges who are affected. And they haven't done anything. Just because there's a fight between their teachers and government over allowances, 49,000 students will suffer. And we're going to have a conversation about how do you really resolve this to get the teachers back to the classroom so these 49,000 students who are paying fees to be there really get what they do. And that's why we're having this conversation tonight. It is just not a case of strike. It is just one that has just dragged for too long. Now, the CTAC, their demands are pretty simple. They want government to adhere to an agreement that was reached in 2023. Now, that agreement was clear that they should be paid allowances. Government has not paid the allowances, and so they've called the strike. They also want government to restore their frozen salaries. Some of the salaries have been frozen already, and that for them is simply not good enough. Now, the important thing to notice that this trajectory has been something that has been long in coming, because you have to go back to June 14, when CETA first declared that strike, and then get to June 20, when the NLC, by the way, I need to spare a moment to talk about the NLC. The National Labour Commission is in court, but they're not in court primarily to force CETA to call off their strike. They're in court to get an order to compel government to honor the agreement that they reached. That is as simple as it gets, right? An order to get government to comply. Government sat through negotiations. They agreed to pay the allowances, and government had reneged on that particular agreement. They failed to comply. To the point where the NLC rarely does this, by the way, in fact, the NLC has dragged government to court because they have failed to comply with an NLC order. So the NLC is in court. So while they were in court, trying to sort this out, get an order from the court to compel government, make it, of course, impossible for government to say no anymore, because if government does not do it, it will be in contempt, right? So they are in court doing this. While they're in court, then the teachers say they're calling a strike. So NLC then says, well, but you know we are fighting for you in court. The court then gives an order from what the NLC's boss tells me on radio, gives an order for the teachers to return to the classroom because this matter is sub judice before a court and it's been heard. And so that, in essence, is why the NLC is pointing to the court's document and the court's own ruling on this matter, that the teachers should return to the classroom while this matter is determined before a court of competent jurisdiction. And then we talk about July 14, where the NLC secures this injunction. This injunction was released by the court itself on the matter. That's according to the NLC themselves. Today, a meeting was called, and nothing has happened. You know, we have also heard GTEC say, well, if you're not going to call off your strike, then we're freezing your July salary. So the teachers aren't going to get July salary. As I've said, they've been out of the classroom for 40 days. And GTEC says, well, if you've been out of the classroom for 40 days, then you do not deserve to be paid. That is really what has angered CTAC to say, well, if that is the case, you're calling your bluff. We're not going to go back to the classroom at all. In fact, we are withdrawing all services. There are other services that we're still rendering: counseling, supervision, attending meetings. And they say now that they won't do that anymore because of this particular freeze order. So reverse the freeze order, pay us our salaries, and then maybe we can consider sitting down for a conversation. It is the reason why CTAC did not go for a meeting that was called today in the desperate attempt to resolve the matter. They will not sit for any meeting until this has been withdrawn. So this is a standoff. Question really is, will the government have the courage to withhold the salaries of these teachers in an election year? Right? Because you're angering a huge segment of the voting population. But that is a GTEC order to the Controller and Accountant General's Department. That remains to be seen, whether that will be carried out. So that's where we are on this particular issue. And as we speak, these 69,000 students will have their teachers not attending any meeting to plan for lessons because already they're not teaching. If there's a congregation ceremony, and I doubt there will be any, the teachers won't go because they've withdrawn that service. If any of these students need some form of counseling, they won't get it now because of the escalation we've seen in the strike. And any form of supervision in the halls will not happen because the teachers say, we are escalating this and withdrawing all these are the services that we used to render. We need to have a conversation about this. It's been going on for 40 days. It hasn't attracted the due attention, but consider this. The colleges of education, they produce the teachers who end up in the classroom that train our future. They train the children that eventually will grow to run this economy. And if you don't get education right, you're just setting a country up to fail. So it is a very serious matter, but it hasn't been dealt with as such by the authorities, even, I must say, by the media. So tonight, let's spend some time and unpack this. Let's understand it. Let's see if we can make some progress. I've been trying to chase the authorities themselves, NLC, government, GTEC, to come for this conversation. And you can see that the standoff has really led to one that nobody wants to talk to each other. But must it go on forever? That's the conversation we're having tonight after this break. And thanks for joining us here on PM Express. It is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough, and no matter your water needs, Syntex Tanks has it all. The Syntex Tanks is first to introduce the double layer tank, and now you can have as many layers as you want. Syntex Tanks is first to introduce the white inner layer tanks in Ghana. We now introduce you to the customer specs order, which lets you order any color and size of preference. Syntex Tank gives you the longest warranty, 7 years, which no other tank gives you in Ghana. You want to call them because they're across the country, 0244-335-168, or shop online at syntexgh.com. A very important conversation tonight on the back of that 40-day strike, and it's still ongoing with no end in sight. In fact, if anything at all, it's actually become worse today with an escalation and not a de-escalation. And all the parties right now aren't talking. In fact, the teachers have said they will not engage because of the directive for their salaries to be withheld. But the students are in the middle of all this. We'll talk to them. My guest, Professor Samuel Atintonu, is the president of the Conference of Principals of Colleges of Education, PRINCOP. Swale Razak is the president of the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana. He's with me in the studio. Austin Gama is a labor consultant. We have Dr. Clement Park, and he's a deputy ranking on the Education Committee in Parliament, and they were scheduled to meet with the parties involved in this particular matter. I want to check if that happened. Larry Agbado is the editor, College of Education Weekly Journal, and they've been very involved also in what has been happening and following this pretty closely. We'll get his perspective on this as well. And I really want to start from the top, because where we are tonight is about exploring possible solutions. And I want to bring in Prof into the conversation first, because Prof, I know in all the meetings you've been involved or invited to participate, there was a meeting that was scheduled for today that didn't happen. Do you know why?
Thank you very much. Good evening to all the principals who are listening to this program and everybody who is concerned about this crisis. Yes, the meeting did take place around 3 o'clock. We just closed from that meeting.
Okay.
So I can confirm that the meeting took place.
That's good, because just before I came on air, I was speaking to the NLC boss who says he was very tired. He didn't want to even talk about it. He's on strike himself.
I know.
And so you got a sense that it didn't happen. But it's good that it happened. So what happened? What was the outcome?
Yeah. I think we have had very fruitful engagement. There have been very significant progress on the discussions. The details, I think you get to know about it maybe not too soon, not very far away. But at this point, I can always say that we have had very, very progressive meeting this evening with the minister himself in attendance, and CTAC leadership came.
CTAC, they were represented today.
Yes, they were there.
That's good.
Led by their president.
Led by the president.
The honorable minister invited us, so they have no business not to come. They honored the meeting.
NLC was represented?
No, it was Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, Prinkoff, Minister of Finance, GTEC, at least all those who matter on the program, and then CTAC itself came.
But it's
so
important.
All the parties were there, sir.
It's important tonight for the teacher trainees themselves who are in colleges who are wondering what's happening. What really happened at this meeting? Did you reach an agreement?
I wouldn't say we have reached an agreement. As I said, we have got some significant commitments from government side and the CTAC side. So we ended there. We are going to do more engagement. They're also going back. And then we'll get to know the details probably by the weekend.
Fair to say then that this ended inconclusively?
I wouldn't say so. But as I said, we have government side have made some commitments. CTAC itself has also made some commitments. So we needed to go back and do consultations. But for me, this meeting in particular was very, very important. Given the background that some things have happened up to where we are, I'm happy they turn up. And we all made a very strong appeal to them to reconsider their position. And we hope that not going far, perhaps over the weekend, we hear from them. But I'm very happy that when they came to the table, it wasn't an entrenched position that they have. And also happy that from the government side, as I said, it was a minister, honorable minister.
CTAC members initiated the...
Dr. Aduchum himself was there, and everybody. So we had very frank discussions aimed at resolving this matter.
Did they agree to call off the strike?
That I cannot say.
Okay. Stay with me. Stay with me.
Thank you.
And I want to bring in right now the Deputy Ranking on Education Committee. He also has been very involved in this, and I know yesterday there were moves at the committee level to try and get the parties into a meeting in Parliament today. Dr. Clement Park, did this meeting happen?
Well, Evans, let me say good evening to you too, as well as my co-panelists. And of course, it's an election year, so I must greet the people of Butsa South. The short answer is no. Whilst we had made arrangements and written to CTAC and GTEC, which was the outcome of a committee of the whole called by the Speaker as a result of a motion that I moved in making a statement on the floor of Parliament, calling attention to this rather prolonged strike which is bound to affect the academic calendar and to affect the progress of the students. Parliament decided that we engage the feuding parties, so to speak. After we had communicated the intent of Parliament to meet with CTAG and GTEC, we got information to the effect that the Minister for Education, who himself was there in Parliament, and the Minister for Labour to brief the House on the impasse as well as steps that the two ministries, and for that matter, government was taking to try and resolve it, had also then written inviting CTAG, of course, Prinkov, and GTEC for a meeting today. So in the wisdom of the committee, we felt that we should stay off, or at least suspend our meeting, allow the sector minister to engage with his agency, GTEC, as well as the principals of the colleges of education and CTAG. Based on the outcome of that meeting, we as a committee would then make a determination as to whether it is still necessary for us to invite CTAG and GTEC.
There may have been
for our proposed meeting. So our outcome.
Yes, Doc, please proceed. There was an interference there in your line. I believe we've lost him again. We'll try and rectify that. But before I come to the Teacher Trainees Association of Ghana, Razak, who's been in the studio, remember, they are bearing the brunt of all this. I'll come to him. One more clarity from Professor Tintonu on this meeting that was held today. He says it was fruitful, and he is hopeful that by the weekend we'll get some communication from CTAG. Prof, that's the confidence you have having met today, right? That you're hoping that by this weekend you're expecting to hear something from your teachers. Hello, President.
Based on the discussion that we have, we expect them to get us some communication. If you understand CTAG strike, like in other union, definitely those who came were their leaders, and definitely whatever transpired today, they have to communicate that back to their council or do their consultations.
Okay.
So for us, we appeal strongly to them, and that's why I said over the weekend we expect to hear from them.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I want to bring in Razak. Razak, what do you say to that? It appears that some progress has been made. Prof doesn't want to disclose that yet. I believe he's waiting for the CTAG themselves to do the communications. What do you make of that?
Yes, first of all, I would extend warm greetings to all teacher trainees across the length and breadth of the country, and equally acknowledge the solidarity and efforts placed by my National Executive Council in this process that we have been having these challenges of this CTAG strike all this while. It is true, we are equally at the Ministry of Education. We actually had the audience with the Minister of Education where we were briefed as to how the whole discussion was going to go on. In fact, before coming here, I got in touch with the CTAG president who said the same thing, not different from what Prof is saying. He equally held the view that the meeting was fruitful, but they were still going to have their discussion as a council.
Did they give any specifics as to what they agreed on in this meeting?
Well, that was not provided.
Okay.
Yes.
And did they give an assurance when exactly we can expect to hear from them?
Well, that assurance, like what Prof is saying, we don't have that assurance yet, but we are hopeful that before the weekend, like Prof is saying, we might be getting something very, very, very useful to teacher trainees.
This has happened and it's been going on for 40 days now, as I've been counting. What has been the impact?
The impact has been very disturbing in all the colleges. It hasn't been different in any college at all. In fact, if you travel to the west and then the north and even the south, all the colleges that we have across, the impact has been the same. Students' academic activities have actually come to a halt. Other external matters, or should I say programs and activities that are supposed to be undertaken by this membership of CTAC is not also done. And then orientation activities that were scheduled so that level 300 students would go and have their micro-teaching activity has actually not taken place. Even if you consider the security implications, it is quite dangerous because the teachers are actually not there to enforce the rules and regulations that are governing the colleges of education. Just recently, you might have heard the student we lost in Atibubu College of Education when he left the campus and tragically lost her life at teaching mine. These are all some effects that will contribute to the strike, because if the strike hadn't been in place, the students would have been in the classroom and learning at that point. So by and large, the effects of the CETA strike is very disturbing, and all teacher trainees are feeling it. More specifically, I would importantly add level 400 students who are currently on a new policy directive, that is the in-out system, which mandates that level 100 to level 300 stay in the campus and level 400 students stay outside campus whilst committing to the various colleges for academic activities. These students, by no fault of theirs, have already committed themselves to rental agreements, knowing very well that by September 7th, they'll be done with their program. And then for over a month, like you said, 40 days, this strike action has been in full force, leaving these students stranded because they would have to pay for their own meals, pay for their utility, other expenses that come. You can bear with me the current economic situation we have found ourselves as a country.
So that then has been devastating for you. And then today, we got an additional notice from CTAC that the strike is not enough. They're withdrawing all other services, including counseling and supervision. Has that already taken effect today?
Yes, that has taken effect because CTAC, ever since the call of their strike action, some of our teachers have not even showed themselves in the colleges.
So they were not already doing supervision and counseling?
Yes, they were not. Some of them were not even coming to
the
colleges. But we had some who were also in the colleges helping in one.
So on the back of today's notice, those who were on campus will now also withdraw?
Yes, so they withdraw. But in all this, if you look at what led them taking this decision, has to do with the GTEC notice as to the salaries being blocked, their salaries being blocked. That was a point we thought this wouldn't have gotten to, because all along we were very hopeful that with all the assurances we were getting from all our stakeholders, from Prinkov, from the minister himself, we met him about 3-4 weeks ago, GTEC and then fair wages, we expected more constructive dialogue or more constructive way of dealing with the situation than going to that tangent of blocking the salaries of our teachers, which further heightened the situation, letting them come out with a release by saying they are laying...
Escalating the already devastating strike. And Professor Tintonu, let's now look at the real reason why they're on strike. They talk about unpaid allowances that they had agreed with government for government to pay. And I know you sat in those meetings. What can you tell us about the nature of the agreement that government had reneged on?
I think the issue with CETAC so far had been the allowances, and if you want to sum it up, parity or pay, equality with pay in terms of payment compared to universities. So one of them is that in 2022-2023, they had an agreement for book and research allowances, a top-up payment of about Ghanaian cedis. It was supposed to be 2,000, but out of that, 800 had been paid, and then 1,060 cedis was left. So we processed it, sent it through GTEC to Minister of Education and then to Minister of Finance. That hadn't been paid and it became an issue. So what they wanted was the money must be paid to them Luckily for us, sometime last week, Minister of Finance have made some releases through what we call the Give Me system, where principals will have to process. We have done that. The claims are at the controller. By yesterday, almost 30% of the college's claims had been processed at controller, waiting for final payment. So that is far advanced. It's no longer an issue. In terms of the parity with payment,
so the first part is the allowances that has been processed.
Top up.
Okay.
Allowances, book and research.
And when you say allowances that you've processed, does it cover all arrears?
Oh, it's not. It's just a one-off payment. The arrears is about 1,060 cedis that I talked about. So there's not much to it than that one.
Okay.
So that's all of it. Now the other one has to deal with what they call all year round. In 2022, we had a calendar where throughout the whole year, the tutors were made to teach. So they never had any rest. So as part of the awards by NLC, they requested that principals should grant them 15 days leave, each of them. And in addition, they should be compensated with a 1 month basic salary. So that's one of the payments that they also embarked on strike. We processed it, sent it to GTEC and to Minister of Finance, but got the report back from Minister of Finance that we should validate it through our internal audits. So principals have done that. Some of them haven't completed the process. So we've given ourselves up to probably this weekend to get all the data to GTEC and back to Minister of Finance. The good news is Minister of Finance have agreed that once they get it, it will also be processed for payment. The biggest one, which happens to be the one that has caused all this, is the case that when colleges of education were sort of changed or transformed to become tertiary institutions, what it meant is that our pay structure, it required to have an MPhil to teach. Some few of them have PhDs. So the agitation is that, just like the universities, if you have somebody with an MPhil in the university, they are classified as assistant lecturers. But that's actually a transitional rank or grade for the universities because you are required to have a PhD now to teach. So the position of these tutors are that even though they don't have PhD, with their MPhil, they should be giving equivalent pay just as their counterparts in the universities. Government then said we have to do what we call a staff audit. Through GTEC have to conduct that one, and we know who and who have what qualification. That was done. And by last year, November, we have the data, but they were left with the implementation. We still needed to check one or two things. So it was one of the major things that CITAC has said that, look, you've done this, it needs to be implemented. Government said yes, we have agreed. Indeed, it was even Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, when the matter came up, they reported to NLC. So we have to understand that the commitment level was high. We needed to know what we should do to be sure we have all the information or the right kind of data. So at this point, government then said, okay, just as it is in the university, if you're an assistant lecturer, you must necessarily show evidence of having a PhD. Either you have completed or you're on a PhD study with the intention to complete to become a lecturer. But looking at it, if they migrate all of you with an MPhil, then you are all becoming assistant lecturer. That is not something good. But I think they insisted and persisted that no. They think that when they went to LLC and had the award, the NLC said deserving members. And that deserving members imply that all people have a research master's degree. That had actually been the bone of contention. But I think the good news is, quite recently, if you listen very well, yesterday the Director General of Ghana Education, they are regulators. They actually define the criteria. They've now agreed that, okay, if you have a master's, research master's degree, then you could also be considered for the migration. And this migration is going to take off next, on July 29th. We have all agreed. CITAC will have his rep, Prinkop will have his rep, so they would also be migrated. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that is a clear roadmap that deals with all the three issues. I mean, the first two issues, from what you've just described, have been substantially dealt with. The second issue, you have a clear roadmap that says on the 29th of July, which is, by the way, just next week, the migration would happen. And the migration, how long will it take for you to complete it? Do you know?
It's a complex process, but we anticipate that within 4 weeks, it should be done. They should be done because we have 46 colleges, and bear in mind, it is not only the CTAC members. What they have, we have all agreed is that you will be migrated based on the university that your college is affiliated to. So, for example, Accra College of Education is affiliated to University of Ghana. So they'll look at the University of Ghana pay structure and say, hey, you are having a PhD here or MPhil. If we migrate you to their structure, where will you be placed? That is how it's going to be. If you are with Cape Coast, then you are migrated along that line, UDS, UEW, and then KNUST. It means that I have to take their time, pick each staff. And this is not only CTAC members, the non-teaching staff and everybody in the colleges will have to be migrated. But earlier on, they met SENSAC, that's a College of Education non-teaching staff. So they...
Hello, Prof. I may have lost his audio there because I can see that he's still engaging me. I'll try and get him back on so we can hear him.
Yes. So 4 weeks. I said 4 weeks. We should be done with the exercise.
Okay. I mean, if that is what the situation is as we speak tonight, then it appears to me that CTAG is being unreasonable, is it not? But they should be declaring an end to the strike tomorrow.
So that's why we said we have appealed to them. What they have been seeing is that, and I think that's where the problem again is, and with our appeal and what we have done, we think that they will have to be very considerate. They said they want money to hit their pockets. So if you have to do a migration for 4 weeks, it is not practically possible. But I'm happy there have been route maps. They have also asked for a route map, and this time around we have done that. So hopefully, when they do their engagement and consultation, we appeal to them and expect that we have a positive result from their further engagement.
I'm certain, Prof, you saw their statement today, escalating the strike even further. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think, of course, they did that because of what the decision of the employer to say we should not validate them for the month of July. For me, it's not the first time. It happened last year, August. It took myself and some other colleagues to appeal to the minister, and they were paid. So what happened, it depends on where we conclude with this, but I don't think it should be any big problem. We can resolve it.
And the authorization was to you not to process. Have you processed already for July?
But once the letter has come, there hasn't been any letter yet, so we have not processed.
Okay. And once you get a letter, you will comply, you will not process?
Oh, yes, we had a letter, so we have not processed. But based on the engagement we have, I hope, and as I said, I have appealed to them. I personally, in the earlier one, went to appeal to the minister, and I think the Honorable Minister is very, very considerate. Let's see how what happens.
Okay, so clarify again. So you haven't processed. Today when you met the minister, were you given the go-ahead to process now?
Oh, as I said, we have had fruitful engagement, so we're waiting to see the rest of the outcomes, then we'll see what to do.
Okay, so...
But the letter, they have not written any letter for us to reverse it.
Reverse it. And you did not also get the minister's go-ahead to process after today's meeting?
Oh, we discussed a lot of things, but I think that with what happened today, I'm also positive that the minister could also have a second look at that.
Okay, so you want the minister to authorize you to process?
Definitely, because we got a letter from GTEC. In fact, it was GTEC that wrote a letter to us, and not until GTEC rise again, I think we cannot do the reverse.
I want to bring in Austin Gama as a labor consultant. He joins me on this. Mr. Gama, is it fair, though, having heard now what the issues are, the principals are staying put. They're not processing the salaries for July. They've met today. It was fruitful, but they still don't have the instructions to process. Is it a fair labor practice?
Thank you, Evans, and good evening to the rest of the panelists and your listeners. Let me be very clear from the outset. I was invited by CITAG to help them have this matter resolved, and together with Prof, who was speaking to you a while ago, they know what we have done so far. Let's be very clear that CITAG has been very reasonable. It is the employer that has not been fair to them. I'm going to use, as a mediator, I have to use charitable and open-ended kind of language. It's the employer that has not been very fair to them. CITAG waited patiently all these years, and they have an agreement. When the agreement was reneged on by the employer, they were patient, and the matter was sent to the National Labour Commission, who constituted themselves into a panel of arbitrators. And the arbitration award was rendered to both parties with reasoning. Therefore, does not lie in the bosom of the employer to unilaterally choose the sort of interpretation they will give to the outcome of the arbitration award. And that sparked the whole problem. When I heard it, and knowing that we all want to build a nation, I had a word with them. And let me be very clear. I know almost all of them now, and they are not doing this for any political mischief. I know who they are. I know which party some of them belong to. So it is not true that these people have been unreasonable. They've been terribly reasonable. And this, to me, is the first time we can qualify this particular strike, except for some hitches, to be one of the most appropriate legal strikes you can describe in this nation. They have not faulted. Hey, they've done nothing wrong. It's the employer that mistook their, lack of having knowledge about how to go about the industrial relations aspect of what they were doing, and took advantage and wanted to create problem for them. And they became tired. And that's why they behave the way they behave.
But if you consider what the Prof, Atintunu, just told us, that after today's meeting, 2 of the 3 issues have now been resolved. He says they process the allowances now. The second part, there's a clear roadmap for that to happen. Shouldn't they be calling up that strike tomorrow?
Well, Prof can confirm to you that I have personally left to just go on my knees to plead with them at no cost to them to go back to school. That's the extent to which I went. But let me say that they've been very fair. I think what they have said this evening, to my knowledge, is that they have had fruitful discussion. In principle, they have nothing against fighting with the employer, but they also have a constituency. They have to meet with their council and have engagement with their members online, and hopefully by Monday they should be able to come to some conclusion and inform the public and the employer about and I do hope that the employer will not renege. Let me take advantage to let people understand that when an arbitration award is rendered by an authorized body, and you, the employer, you have a concern, you have to go and seek clarity from that body. You don't go anywhere, because arbitration award is virtually like going to Supreme Court. That's what it is. But because of maybe, let them understand me, if you lack knowledge about something, you can misapply yourself, and these are the consequences you get. So I hope everybody else listening to you will learn their lesson, because the law is very clear. 28 days after the rendering of the arbitral award, if you have a concern and you want clarity, you can go to the authority and they will give you the clarity. You don't take a unilateral decision by interpreting it the way you like.
And I want to come to the deputy ranking on the Education Committee. I lost him earlier. I hope he's back with me on Zoom, and that is Dr. Clement Apart. Dr. Clement Apart, you were telling us you had planned this meeting. It didn't come up because of the meeting that the Education Minister had called. You've had the details on the back of today's meeting. Do you expect the CTAG now to call off the strike, or do you think there are more fundamental issues that would need to be addressed before they do so?
Well, Evans, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Very well. Well, having followed the discussions so far, I think that our position would not change. It is our hope that the matter will be resolved. But if it is not resolved, then we will have no choice as the representatives of the people to step in. So let's wait and see how it plays out. But you see, I agree perfectly with Mr. Austin Gami. This shouldn't have been the case. There ought not to have been a situation that would have caused CTAG to go on strike if only the employer did what was legally required of the employer. So this entire development is predicated on the employer's failure to execute the arbitration award and to meet its obligations to CTAG. But in all of this, we have always continued to plead that for the sake of the students, they should consider.
We lost him again, and then let me come to Razak. Razak, so we've heard a lot now from Prof. From the details he's giving. You have been in touch with CTAG. You agree that they've been reasonable in this matter? I mean, considering where they are now with resolving the issues?
Well, we don't have much in-depth knowledge about as to whether CTAG is right or CTAG is wrong. What we have clearly seen in the letter that was copied to us is that these were agreements that were agreed by both CTAG and government to be awarded them by the National Labour Commission. And then these awards have been in existence without implementation. That has led to the strike action. So our appeal to us as an association, as a group of students, we are appealing to government to implement the arbitration award as awarded the CTAG by the National Labour Commission, so that we will get our teachers back to the classroom as soon as possible. You're really appealing to CTAG to be more considerate if there are other ways they can resolve it, so that we have our teachers back to the classroom. Because in any case, we just want our teachers to be back to the classroom as soon as possible, so that academic work will begin.
And Prof. Atinton, I'm curious. I mean, for 40 days, the teachers have not been in the classrooms, but the principals, you've chosen not to shut down the schools. Why?
I think all along we have been engaging with them, and we're very hopeful that we would resolve the matter as soon as possible, but it never happened. So we did not want to let the students go, and then the next day they have called off the strike. Nonetheless, apart from the teaching, there's also a practical component that the students have to do. While they were on the strike, we took advantage for the students to go on the field to have the field experience. So we didn't want to lose that component because they have to go for field experience 6 weeks. So if we had shut down the colleges, then that component would not have happened.
Okay. I want to bring Larry, College of Education Weekly Journal. And Larry, where do you stand on this particular matter? The resolution is at hand now. That looks like something that is within reach, with the 3 issues, 2 of them fairly settled. The processing of the July salary still remains outstanding. And I get a sense that from Prof, that until they announce their next move, they are not going to get a directive to process those salaries. Fundamentally, though, are the issues what we've been discussing, or there are other issues that are at play here that really has led to this? Because this is not the first time this is played out. Possible allowances is easy to settle. But then the questions about the parity is there. It appears to me that this whole transition that we did to make them, tertiary education left some fundamental issues unattended to, which has led to where we are.
Yeah, Evans, thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity. At the beginning of the show, when I heard Prophet Clinton, I got a bit relieved that, okay, things are getting better. But when you hear the labor consultant, Mr. Austin Gomez, coming in to say that he even went to the extent of going on his knees to kind of beg the SITAG leadership to call off their strike, even admitting that the strike they are on is very legal, and he had to go that step. That shows to tell you that the situation is quite a serious one. In the past few weeks, even as at this afternoon, I have interacted with a lot of SITAG members, and you see that they are very bent, or they are very serious on going very long on this strike action until they get what they want, because they feel this long overdue. They also feel that looking at the period we find ourselves in an election year, if they're not able to get this now, after the elections, it may probably not happen again. So it's quite a very difficult one. You just asked Prof a question about why the colleges have not been closed down after tutors been on strike for 40 days. And that comes back to also tell us that there are still some kind of deficiencies in the transition that the colleges have undergone in recent years to become degree awarding institutions, kind of, though they are affiliated to 5 mentoring universities. For instance, in the universities, I stand to be corrected. If this should be the university lecturers going on strike for 21 days, probably the universities will be shut down per their documents. Now, you come to the colleges, and the working documents they have, the harmonized conditions of service, the statutes, those documents currently need to be reviewed. And what is being done about those documents? If those documents are reviewed, probably it may even cater for some of these things that are happening now and what will even happen in the near future. We've upgraded the colleges into tertiary institutions, kind of, where they are now affiliated to universities awarding degrees, or the students be awarded degrees upon completion. But these harmonized conditions of service, the statutes, do not really meet what they are currently doing. So, and as you rightly said, this is not the first time SITAG is going on this. About a year ago, somewhere last year, August, they went on a full-month strike just like this. And this year, just at the commencement of the second semester of the academic year, not even a single day did the students even spend in the lecture hall.
So I need to ask the question then. If these 3 issues are adequately dealt with, the allowances are paid and it's been processed, the overtime allowances that they deserve after they were asked to work for longer than they should, and they were supposed to be paid 1 month additional salary, if that is paid, and then the parity issues are addressed after the transition is done from the 29th of July, that's the migration is done. If these 3 issues are dealt with, would that have, in essence, adequately addressed all the teething issues that had been bedeviling the colleges of education since the transition to tertiary level?
I think it will partly address it. It will partly address it with where we are now, where we are currently now. I think it will take us out of the situation we are now. But moving forward,
which other issues will remain fundamentally?
I think there are issues of the tutors also demanding that, GTEC did a staff audit recently, of which Prof. Tintonu is very much aware of, but that staff audit is yet to be implemented. Now, this staff audit basically talks about they being migrated into the tertiary system. So if a college like Ife College of Education, Amejokwe, is affiliated to University of Ghana, Legon, what the lecturers at Legon are taking EP College of Education tutors also want to take SIM. So GTEC did a staff audit recently. Prinkov was actively involved in that.
If I'm not mistaken, he addressed that. And that is why he says that from the 29th of July, they'll do the migration of those who have MPhil and even include those who have masters. And that will sort of deal with that particular part of the problem.
Yes, but if you interact with even most of the CTAC members, majority of them also have issues with the report that came out from that staff audit. So we may get to a point where even after its implementation, CTAC will still raise issues that they are not okay with its implementation and then the whole report that came out. So I thought some of these issues should be addressed ahead of time. The colleges have already suffered in the past few years with these strike issues and its academic calendar and the rest. It's just this year that we've had a full complement of all students being on campus for the academic calendar.
Yeah, and Larry, just because of time, I want to give a quick word to Razak. Razak, on the question of closing down the schools, it's been 40 days now. Should the schools have been closed down?
Well, to us, we don't feel like the schools be closed down, because if the schools are closed down, that would mean the academic calendar is going to be annulled, and then students that were expected to complete will no longer complete. What work?
But you've lost 40 days now, a month and 10 days.
Yes.
I mean, the academic calendar, it's completely gone out of the window now, has it not? How do you recover that? I mean, from your student's point of view, what do you want to see?
Well, with our interaction with the minister and then even with Prinkov, we got in our discussion, it was made known that it is the hours, the contact hours that are really important and not much about the days. So if there is any way we can put in measures to recover those lost contact hours so that we can still have our coursework ongoing, because if we mean to postpone what we were supposed to do this year to next year, that would put more burden to the students.
Let me get clarity for you then on that. Prof, in 30 seconds, what will you do to recover the lost hours? Hello, Prof.
Yeah, so what we do is that we do an extended teaching hours. So if they were ending lectures by 5, we extend it to 6 hours or 7 hours to gain the 10 hours that we have lost. So we do not see that as a problem. We've done it and we can do it to resolve that matter, because I don't want to put so much burden also on the students. Okay,
thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Larry. Thank you. The connection to the Deputy Ranking Education Committee, Dr. Clement Park, wasn't great, but thank you that he joined us with his thoughts on this particular matter. And Razak, I'm grateful. Enjoy the rest of your evening.